You are tuned to the Witching Hours, and I'm your host, Kanaska Carter. So I used to have an FM radio show on CKCU 93.1 FM for 2 years, and I ended up quitting there, and so decided to start up this video format show. So thanks for being here with me today. We're going to get into a few topics. The first one is Erin Valenti from Tinker Ventures and the mysterious circumstances surrounding her death. So, essentially, Tinker Ventures is web development software. And she was out in the Bay Area visiting friends. And what ended up happening was, after she visited her friends, she ended up going missing. And one of the last phone calls she had made with her family, she said, "It's all a game, a thought experiment. We're in the Matrix." And then she went missing. So there's been many rumors circulating in regards to whether or not this is associated with, did she find out about that we're in a simulation potentially? Or was she murdered, right? So what happened here? After she went missing, her body was found in the backseat of her rental car. And when they did the autopsy, it turns out that it was inconclusive. And they had said that she had passed due to a manic episode. So they were trying to, I feel like they were maybe trying to brush off what she was saying in her last conversations, where she said that we're in the Matrix. Maybe she found out something. Who knows, right? So anyway, the autopsy was inconclusive in regards to how she had passed away. And it's just so strange. She was sitting there for days and nobody had seen her. How did this even happen? So it's opening up this idea of, okay, so are we in a simulation? Are we living in the Matrix? If we're to view virtual reality and the progression that even video games are taking, it started from the very simplistic type of video game to a point where soon video games will be indistinguishable from reality. Virtual reality is going to reach a point where we're not even going to be able to tell the difference. So if we're to view that as a possibility with the natural progression of how technology is going, who's to say we don't already have that technology to create this world as a simulated reality? So maybe she was murdered, or maybe she just knew too much and that's why they murdered her. Maybe it's something entirely different. Perhaps it was associated with a manic episode, but that doesn't seem to sit right with me for some reason about it being related to a manic episode. If you guys know anything about this, let me know in the comments. But Erin Valenti is her name, and she was the CEO, the chief executive of Tinker Ventures. I just thought that was very interesting that those were some of the last words that she had said to her family. Even her family thought it was weird. I believe they were speaking about how they don't remember her having manic episodes before. So I thought that was an interesting bit of information related to that case. So what is going on? Are we living in a simulation? Is this a simulated reality? If you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, or if you've ever done psychedelics, you would know that the veil in between worlds is very thin. I've personally seen the other worlds existing side by side with this one when I did psychedelics before. So the veil drops and you're able to see how everything around you is not quite always as it appears in this physical realm. The next thing that I want to talk about is Philip Schneider and his death. So he was a geologist and engineer. He would blast away and deflagrate rock and build underground bases in the United States. So he worked in specifically Dulce, New Mexico, was where he and other government workers were sent to this underground base. I believe it was 99 government workers were sent there, and only 3 survived. And he speaks about in his lectures about how there's an alien-human war going on and how the government knows about this. He ended up being attacked by a gray alien that waved its hand. The way he described it was it waved its hand over its chest and a blue beam shot out at him. And he ended up being hurt pretty badly. He lost 2.5 of his fingers, and as he's talking, you see his fingers missing. Medals, alien medals, and different artifacts and pictures of an alien. And he had many attacks on his life. Like, people were stalking him and trying to kill him from what he was saying in his lectures. So he always said, if you find out that I killed myself, you know that it was not suicide. He said he doesn't want to commit suicide. So if you ever found out that Philip Schneider committed suicide, then he was murdered. He ended up being strangled from what it appeared to be. It was a strangulation. They said it was a suicide, but I really believe it was murder, because it turns out all of his UFO documents were missing. All of his documents associated with aliens was gone after he committed suicide. But all of his valuables were still there. So if it was a murder and it was related to valuables, that was definitely not the case. So I feel that he was killed because he was talking about too much about what was going on in the universe. And he knew of the existence of alien life. He had literally seen it up close. So, of course, they don't want people speaking about things like that. So unfortunately, he lost his life. And I do believe it was not a suicide. I can just, I just feel it in my heart that is not the way that he would have just killed himself, you know? Especially after he publicly stated that if you ever find out it was a suicide, then I was murdered. So, it's interesting. It's very interesting to me, because I've had many close encounters with alien life. 3 in particular. One was in 2010, one was in 2011, and one was in 2015. And it was a different experience each time. The first time it was a gray hybrid that approached me and asked to see my manuscript that I had written. So I've now published 4 books. I'm about to publish a 5th book on August 1st. And so this book was called The Eerie Theory Guide to Mystery, and it was about the mysteries of the world and existence in general. And there was a chapter actually on aliens. So I was walking through Chinatown, and this was in Vancouver, BC. And I saw this man walking next to me to my left. And he called out to me, said, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "Oh, pretty good." And he just like kind of struck up a conversation with me. And we began to talk. And as soon as I looked at his face, he had white hair, straight hair, right to his ears. And he was wearing regular clothing like a 20-something-year-old guy would wear. And I said, "You look just like an alien." And he said, "Yeah, I get that a lot." So like kind of brushing off what I was thinking, you know, like, "Oh, don't be silly," you know, that type of thing. So he said, "What's that you're holding there?" "Oh, it's my manuscript." He said, "Is that a manuscript?" Because I told him it was my book. I just finished printing off my book at the library. And so he asked to see it. And then he offered to walk me to my hotel that I was living in. He said he would walk me there. So we walked. It was maybe about a 5 to 10 minute walk. And we were just talking. And he reached the door of the hotel. I was literally living in the poor zip code of Canada at the time. He said, "Oh, you live here?" Like he was kind of shocked that I lived there. And he stopped at the door and he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "I'll see you in 2 weeks." And I just remember him standing at the door as I was going back inside. And then that was the last I saw him, that I can remember anyway, unless he visited me and then wiped my memory clean from an abduction or something like that. But every time I think about that day, I get an intense feeling of homesickness in my heart. like I had known him from a previous time, or who knows. It just felt like a home that I could never go to. It was very strange. If I ever meet him again, that's going to blow my mind. I know his name was Silas or Cyrus. I'm leaning closer to like Cyrus, or I honestly can't remember. It was Silas or Cyrus. And I looked online under those names. I couldn't find anybody in Vancouver that looked like him. So if anybody has ever seen this guy, let me know. But I really believe it was a close encounter. The second close encounter I had while awake, because I have had many lucid experiences in dream state before that experience. 2011, I was living on a campground called Whispering Pines. And the reason why I was living there is because somebody had caught our house on fire. I was staying there with roommates. And so I was firekeeping. It was my duty that night to keep the fire going for my group of friends. So I would go into the woods and collect deadfall or dried twigs and wood and things like that to keep the fire going all night. And about my fifth time going back into the woods, I see shift its weight in front of me. Kind of had his arms like a T-Rex. He was like this. And then as far away as this camera is from my face, I saw exactly what you see a small gray alien looking like in all the movies. And it stared at me. It had the big cranium, the big black eyes, small facial features, small thin limbs, very short. Exactly like what a small gray alien is depicted as that was standing maybe 2 feet away from me. And I was startled. I was in the middle of the woods by myself, and my friends were way back at the camp where I had the fire pit. They were all the way back there, so I was startled. And so I ran away. I ran back to the fire pit and told my friends what I had seen. And I often wonder, like, what would have happened if I would have stayed, and, like, tried to even touch him, like, what would have happened. So I went back and told my friends what I had seen. And 2 hours later, the other half of our group came back. It was the younger part of our group. They were just walking around the campground. They came back, and it turns out a 13-year-old girl that was with them, she had seen a white figure in the woods right around the same time that I saw the small gray alien. So, for a fact, I know that aliens exist, okay? I've seen them up close and personal. So that kind of confirmed to me that what I was seeing, I was not crazy, because we both had a very similar experience at the exact same time, in the same location. So that kind of just made me believe that, okay, yeah, I'm not crazy. The third experience was, I actually talked about this on the last show, the rake, okay, is what is quite commonly known as. It looks like a demon. It looks like an alien, but it has the same type of a head as a human. It doesn't have a massive cranium like a gray alien. And it was midnight. I decided to go for a run. And I see float out from the bush across the street from me exactly what looks like the rake. It was floating a foot off the ground. And it froze up. Its eyes were like, like I had caught it doing something it shouldn't have been doing. And then it proceeded to come out to the curb. And then after it was floating out from the curb, floating out from the bush, away on all fours, looked at me, and then ran to its left on all fours. I ran the entire way home. I thought I was going to die. I thought a random alien was going to jump out from the bushes and kill me. Well, that didn't happen. I didn't die. But it was one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had. I'd say probably the most terrifying experience I've ever had, compared to the time that I saw a faceless demon when I was like 15 years old. So those are the 3 close encounters that I've had while being fully awake. So if it was just to be, me saying to you that I only saw them in a lucid experience, which I've had many of those, then, the possibility of me thinking that they were real, I've always believed that they were real. But if I was just telling you about dreams that I had, then okay, maybe I'm just making it up, When you're fully awake and you have a close encounter with an alien creature, it really makes you second guess, like, what is actually happening here, So I went on to have a radio show for 2 years, and I would talk about my experiences. I've lived in many haunted houses. I've had missing time. I'm also a psychic medium, so I do readings for people every day, every second day. So yeah, when it comes to Philip Schneider believing that aliens are real and him having an encounter, I 100% believe what he is saying about that, and I do believe that it is true. So I had a video go viral on TikTok, and the video was talking about Britney Spears, this Mandela effect that just blew up. And basically, the Mandela effect for this has many explanations, okay? So she, in the clip that I showed, it looks like she's reaching for her headset. Maybe it's a dance move. Maybe people are remembering the live videos, but so many people commented saying they never saw a live video and they remember her having a headset. I specifically remember her having a headset in that video. Now, the Mandela effect is when thousands of people believe one thing or thousands of people believe multiple things, right, about an historical event. So it's like either it's split into two perceptions or multiple perceptions. So there was also a lot of Barbie dolls and Halloween costumes of Britney Spears, people dressed up as her with a headset. So that it begs the question, is it a change in the simulation? Is it a glitch in our reality? Or is it just a simple case of misremembering? However, the other explanation I was thinking about is perhaps if we're to view it in a quantum mechanics type of way, if we're to view it in a quantum way, which is everything is happening at once, you are living in multiple possibilities at once, and everything that you see is based upon perception. So this would lead me to think that perhaps because there's so many people remembering the headset being a different color or them not remembering it at all, and each observer created they saw a certain version within the multiverse, if we're to believe in a multiverse theory. So some people saw a white headset, some people saw a black headset, some people saw a tan headset. And then, it's just like, what is happening here? Are we misremembering it, or is it actually something that changed? Was there a timeline shift? Who knows? But it is fun to think about, to be honest with you. Now, when it comes to the Nelson Mandela effect, that's how the whole Mandela effect thing started. Was people believe that he died in the 80s or the 90s. Now, I personally thought he died in the 80s or 90s, and then turns out he died December 5th, 2013. The thing about this is perhaps he did die in one reality, and then the timeline shifted. Or the evidence that I found was that there's this book called English Alive. It was written in 1991. And there's a page talking about Nelson Mandela's death. On July 23rd was the date that they had set in this book. That was a published document, right? But they also stated in the book, I think they were talking about the future, like it was talking about in a future tense. The main thing that leads me to think that it could be a case of misremembering is George Bush did a statement saying that Mandela is dead. He was saying about how Saddam Hussein had killed him or something like that. And he made this statement in the early 90s. And I think that this could have caused for there to be a mass memory created where people thought that he had died. And South Africa had allegedly rejected this and said, no, he is still alive. And then months before his death in 2013, George Bush gave his condolences, saying that Mandela had died again. He was, so I don't know if George Bush just has a horrible memory but that could be the explanation for the Nelson Mandela effect, is George Bush gave a false statement and it caused people to have a mass memory associated with it. Or we do live in a simulation and they did an upgrade, or there's multiple timelines coexisting at once. So who knows what is going on? But it is fun to think about these things and to converse and talk about them and, see what other people think about it as well. So if you guys have ever had a paranormal experience, feel free to go to my website, kanaska.com. Send me a message about your paranormal experiences. I will be doing interviews soon, starting up next week, and posting them to the show and including it in the show. So if you've ever had a strange paranormal experience, let me know. I do want to hear from you. And maybe we can get you on as a guest on the show and do like a Zoom call or something like that. But the universe is mysterious. There's mystery surrounding us constantly. And we are powerful beings. We have abilities that we're told to suppress quite often. As soon as we go to school, we're told to sit still for hours a day. And it's almost like a lot of our abilities are stifled from day one once we begin school. But anyway, even Bill Cooper, he witnessed a UFO fly up out of the ocean when he was serving in the Navy, and he was debriefed by a commanding officer after they berthed the submarine, saying that if you speak about what you didn't see, you could be fined up to $10,000, lose all paid allowances due or to be due, or you could serve jail time if he was to speak about this disc-shaped craft he witnessed fly up out of the ocean, flip on its axis, do spins in the air, come back down to the water. The water parted in front of it. And he said any aircraft that would have hit the water at that time would have disintegrated on impact. It went into the water. And that's why they did the debriefing when they berthed the submarine by a commanding officer who was essentially threatening them. Bill Cooper went on to create a radio show, and he published books and many different types of written works. And they drove him off the road at one point, and he lost his leg by people who later visited him in the hospital, saying that if you continue to speak about these things, then it's going to get worse. He had to, I believe, even put his family into hiding. And they ended up luring him out of his home. So he predicted the 9/11 attacks in June of 2001. He said about how convenient it is that the top FBI and intelligence teams cannot find Osama bin Laden, but an American journalist with a TV camera crew waltzes into his hideout and interviews him. So there was an arrest warrant put out for his arrest September 11th, 2001, but it was postponed till November 5th, 2001, gunning him down and saying that he was part of a militia group and all these things. Meanwhile, they were threatening him.
Sorry to interrupt your little show. I don't even know what kind of show that's supposed to be. You think you can talk about conspiracies and get away with it so easily? Kanaska's been taken to our spaceship, where you will never see her again until next Wednesday, right here on YouTube. So make sure you go follow her social media. I will make sure to put the description on the screen for where you can go and follow her social media. Fools. Sleep with one eye open. I may be paying you a little visit very soon. Until next week. We'll see you then for another episode of The Witching Hours.
Where am I? What's going on? Somebody save me.